So namaste, everybody, namaste. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is actually the second attempt to do this live. I got a few minutes into the previous attempt, and unfortunately, the electricity cut out, and that often happens when we're charging the electric car. The system can get a little bit overloaded, especially when it's a very sunny day like it is here right now. So anyway, the calling home. So yeah, I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about this today because it may seem like the world's gone a little bit crazy at the moment, but the calling home is always here. And, you know, I remember particularly, it came to me again this morning, around 17 years ago it was, coming across via a series of synchronicities. I came across the Conversations with God books. And I remember opening the book and reading about Neil Donald Walsh's story, who was at the time the first book was written, on the verge of suicide. And he got up in the middle of the night and actually decided to write an angry letter to God. And he did this, and he wrote very, very hard on the paper and was venting all his anger and frustrations with life and so forth. And he did that to the point where he completely had nothing more to say and was about to put the pen down because he kind of felt completely kind of exhausted and empty. And he suddenly, something like almost like an invisible force stopped him from doing that. And he suddenly heard this kind of message, shall we say, which I now know to be from the silence inside. And he said, Neil, do you want an answer to all these questions, or are you just venting? And he said, he wrote down in response, well, I am venting, but if there's an answer, I'd sure like to hear it. And a little bit of dialogue started to go on because he was so open and so empty now. And he eventually came to the point in a few sentences where this question was asked. He wrote it down as this: to whom does God talk and when? To whom does God talk and when? And I remember reading clearly this sentence myself, and I remember this arising, this awareness, this anticipation here within me, the knowing of the response to that question before I'd read what was written. And what came back to Walsh at the time was the same knowing and realization that had occurred in me, or remembering in that moment. And it was this: I talk to everyone all the time. The question is not to whom do I talk, but who listens. Let me say that again. I talk to everyone all the time. The question is not to whom do I talk, but who listens. And therein, my friends, is the key to spiritual self-realization. If we take the choice to switch from transmit, always on transmit, asking for things from life, asking for things from whatever we want to call it, God, the universe, or whatever, we're not actually being still and knowing or listening. We must make this switch from transmit to receive. And that means being still and opening to that which is here. Another little piece connected with that is by my bedside. It's actually, although I'm not in the slightest bit religious, obviously I share the message of spiritual self-realization, but by my bedside, from around the same time, 17, 18 years ago, I bought this beautiful piece of calligraphy. And on it, it is written, "Be still and know that I am God." And I didn't know at that time what that really meant until some considerable years later, when the realization flowered. For it is in silence that you realize your truth, and in truth you realize you are silence. Let me say that again. In silence you realize your truth, and in truth you realize you are silence. And this silence is infinite silence. That's the words it used in the realization for me, or infinite awareness, or infinite consciousness, or true self, or essence, or source, or universe. And even if you want to use that word, although the word is much abused, God. But this is not personal, it is infinite consciousness, or infinite awareness, or infinite silence, which is my preferred term because it speaks to isness. The first two letters of the words infinite silence are isness. Now, the thing is, we don't have to go through the type of experience that Walsh had on the verge of suicide he was when he wrote his angry letter to God, although many of us have very traumatic experiences in life. Many have that, but it's not essential for the realization, for a deep awareness to emerge. It often happens because at that point there's a deep surrender that can and does take place. But I look at the world at the moment, and I remember particularly in the early phases of lockdown, certainly here in the UK, and perhaps that might be your experience elsewhere, it was like the world had gone still. It had gone silent. It was very palpable and noticeable. Whereas right now, if you were to look across many platforms, particularly social media platforms and so forth, it kind of might look a little bit like the world's gone crazy. There's so much angst, noise, discussion, debating, arguing going on there. And not a lot, if the truth were known, of listening, being still, being open to that which is always present, being still and knowing. And yet, even in this, if we want to call it craziness, this heat of the moment, the calling to truth is always there. Because eventually, when one's argued enough, vented enough, been angry enough, been sad enough, and so forth, and had enough, so to speak, then these are the moments, or one of the moments, and one of the ways in which the deep crack, or the opening to the highest truth, can take place. But it doesn't have to be that difficult. We can make a conscious choice to be open, to be still, to meditate, and to open to the awareness that's ever present. We may go on a journey of being a seeker, but really what I would say is actually call off the search. Yes, call off the search. And by that I mean it's about realizing, not seeking, finding, not searching, and seeing, not looking. Sometimes it can be expressed this way. You get there by realizing you are already there. And this there is not a place, it's a space of infinite awareness, eternal silence or eternal stillness or infinite consciousness. That is the witness to all that is appearing on the green screen of consciousness, because that's what consciousness is like. It's like a green screen. You can project anything and everything onto it, but you, that which we are, is both the projector, the projected, the screen, all of it and none of it. But we're so focused most of the time on what's going on up in our heads and arguing the toss, so to speak, with life, rather than coming back and being the witness to that which is appearing, that which is simply silently and neutrally and non-judgmentally present here now. So we can follow the calling home through the noise until we get fed up of the noise, through the craziness that we all adopt in life, or we can open to the stillness that's present here now. And I'm feeling called to offer a little exercise here for those who are open to it, because I can see there's quite a few people watching. So if you want to go with this, it's quite short and it's very simple and actually very powerful and very profound. So have a go at this if you feel the call. Just simply close your eyes now, just for a moment. Just for a moment. And ask this question inside. Who am I? Who am I? And just be with that for a few moments and see what comes to you. Now, when I ask that in front of groups of 30, 40, 50 people or whatever, the answers can vary a little bit. Some will go straight to mind-based identity, man, woman, mother, father, these kinds of roles, or maybe even your job or whatever, but none of that is who you are. There may be some people start much closer to an awareness, and you might get some words like they may not know, there may not be an understanding or a realization, or you may even get a word like love emerging. And then the second part of the exercise is a slight change to that, and this tends to help a lot of people. So if you're feeling cold, just close your eyes again. Just close your eyes again. And now ask this question inside. Who am I without memory. Who am I without memory? And just be with that for a few moments. Who am I without memory? And then, whenever you're ready, just open your eyes. Now, when I normally go to a group of people and ask what's here on this one, we start to get much closer, and responses like void, stillness, silence, love, peace, and other similar answers start to emerge. And this now is so much closer to the realization of the self, because what we've done is taken the mind out of the equation and the energetic memory bank out of the equation and left what we call mind nowhere to go. Now that exercise, who am I, or who am I without memory, is actually a meditation within itself. And if you use that regularly, it will bring you naturally and effortlessly back to a stillness and awareness that there is something, an awareness that is before and beyond mind, that sees all of the waves of life, thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions, commotions, emerging like waves from the ocean, and then melting back like waves do into the ocean. And eventually you will realize that, like Rumi put it, you're not a drop in the ocean, but that actually you're the entire ocean in a drop. Both and neither. You are in fact infinite awareness. So coming back to our title here, that calling is ever present, no matter what is going on in life. And even if the world does seem like a crazy place at the moment, and it could seem like that, or could feel like that, that silent stillness, that infinite essence, or that infinite awareness always, always is present and remains untouched, unmoved, undiminished, unchanging, infinite, whole, complete, and you, non-personal, are that. And also its projection, all of it and none of it. But it is this unchanging essence, stillness, infinite silence that is forever communicating in communion with itself, as itself, consciousness, speaking to consciousness about consciousness, calling itself back home to the realization of this infinite awareness or infinite silence. And it has no judgment about any of the experiences of life. And it's not a case of having to believe somebody like me or anybody else for that matter, for this cannot be gifted to you by someone. It can only be realized by awareness, as awareness, that one is this infinite awareness or infinite silence. The calling is there, whether you're in the mountains or in the valleys or in the darkest moments or the moments of your greatest joy. or you're in the deserts of life, or in the oasis, or in the craziness of the world, or in the stillness of nature, that calling is ever present. It's here and it's coming to you, from you, as infinite awareness or infinite silence. That calling is here now, never not here. It's coming from within, and within is not a direction, it's the inner infinite dimensions of life. For you are life. You know, sometimes I'll say that life is death and that death is life. And what I mean by that is that as the identity or the identification with the ego mind, the body mind identity, not the ego itself, but the identification with it completely and utterly drops or dies, then what remains is life, and that life is eternal, and that life is that which you are, always have been, and always will be. It's beyond and before belief. Sometimes I'll put it this way: truth is unbelievable. Yes, truth is unbelievable. And what I mean by that, it is beyond and before the idea or concept of belief. Belief is something outside of you, something that you haven't experienced yet. This of which is being spoken is infinite, and there can be nothing outside of it. There can be nothing outside of it, and it's one indivisible whole. And this that we're experiencing here in this realm that we call planet Earth is kind of like the holodeck on Star Trek. It looks and feels very real. It's a very real experience. It's a very beautiful experience when we understand what life really is, and that we are life, and that life is in communication and communion with itself as itself always. So the question comes, will we continue to pursue the noise and continue to suffer, or be still and know? There's no wrong or right about this. It's just some paths are easier. And if you're prepared to be still and be open to this infinite possibility that's here now, always here now, never not here, and that you're never not that, and there's never been a time when you were not this, and there never will be a time when you are not this. Then if you're prepared to be open to that, and also as part of that, let the emotional body and all its beliefs and attachments dissolve, then this realization, this self-realization as infinite silence or infinite awareness, or the universe, or the true self, whatever, or the essence, or the source, whatever you want to call it, it can be and will be realized. It's not just for the special few. It is that which we all are, always have been, always will be. That's the calling home. And even if the world seems like a crazy place at the moment, that calling is still there. Be still and know the calling is here now. Namaste. 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 Philip Wade here, broadcasting from a beautifully sunny North Yorkshire in the Universal Studio, with Zen garden and water feature gently flowing in the background, if you can hear that. And if anybody wants to explore that further, some time ago, what I've just been sharing there, I felt a very strong calling to write down what ended up being called a letter from God. But you could call it a letter from the universe or a letter from silence. If anybody wants that, I'll pop that in the comments. Other than that, wherever you are, morning, afternoon, evening, have a beautiful day. Namaste. Namaste. Namaste.